Some learning today. All right, this is a great app. The Daily Siyum. You learn one Mishnah, and you get the chus of finishing the whole Shas Mishnayos. So the Mishnah that was assigned to me today is Hamid, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Beis, and it says Amalehem Amamuna. The appointed Kohen, the appointed priest, would say to them in the Beis Hamikdash, Tzuruim Higia Zman Hashchita. Go out and see if the time of the Shchita, of the slaughtering, has arrived. In Higia, if it has arrived, Haroy Omer, the one who's watching, says Barkai. So it's shining. Masya ben Shmuel Omer, Masya ben Shmuel said, Nekol Mizrach, has been illuminated until it is in Hebron. And they say yes. And this mention of Hebron brings this schus because the tzaddikim say that if you mention Hebron, you mention Hebron, which is where the patriarchs are buried, so then it brings upon us the schus avos. So that's why the Mishnah mentions Ad Shebechevron, that was the custom to mention Hebron. And similarly, wherever tzaddikim are buried, the tzaddikim say that if you mention the name of that place, it brings a schus. So just to mention the name of the city, of the town Barditchev, it brings the schus of Reb Levi Yitzchak Tzur Sashem Barditchev, the Heilige Barditchev Rav Schus Yigalanim Klasulamain. Similarly, you mentioned Lezhensk, it brings the schus of Reb Melech. You mentioned Uman, it mentions the schus of Reb Nachman Breslov. You mentioned Mezhbush, brings the schus of the Baal Shem Tov Kodesh and the Abdur Rav and the Baruch Mezhbutz, or another tzaddikim that are buried in Mezhbush. Yol brings the schus of the Samarav, the schus of the Rimnitzer and the Sklener Rebbe's and the Rebbe Menansi. All right. Which this wasn't like exactly this place. This is very precarious. I don't know if I can make it up this hill now. All right. Where is this guy going? All right. Let's go right there. All right. Tehillim, we're Psalm 42. I like to do it with the truck, so let's so Psalm 42. Well, I'm not saying Naskil Lifnei Korach Hayol Parog Alafi Kemoyim Ke Nafshi Sarog Elech Elohim Soma Nafshi Elohim Lo El Chai Masay Aboy Be'Roev Pnei Elohim Hay Salidin Asi Lechem Yoimam Laila B'Mor Elai Kol Hayom Ayeh Elohecha Eilas Krevesh B'cha Alai Nafshi Ki Arvor Asach Adadei Ad Beis Elohim B'Korim Navasayla Hamoin Chageg Matish Teichachi Nafshi Atahami Alai Hoichil Elohim Ki Oid Oiden O Yeshu Ois Panav Elohai Alai Nafshi Sish Tocha As Korchem Eretz Yardain Chermoinim and Harmzar Tahaim Al Tahaim Kurlakol Sinarecha Kushbarecha Begalecha Alai Avaru Yom Mitzaveh Arinoi Chasdoi Uvalayla Shiroi Agni Tfilah El Chayoy Amra La El Salhi Lama Shechachtani Lama Kaider Eleich Lachatz Ayev Gretzach God's Maisai Chefuni Tzararoi Omram Elai Kol Hayom Ayelohecha Matish Teichachi Nafshi Matehemni Alai Haychi Lilohim Ki Oid Adan Yishu Ois Panai Elohoi All right. I wanted to share something about some comments that I had on YouTube. Again, I'm gonna pause this for a second. Or wait a second, what's this? No, that's not. How do I just? Oh, first of all, people can chat. Now, oh, how to go? I want to go to these comments. We're still live, right? All right. So this was all right. All right. So there's a video that I guess got a little bit of attention recently. I don't want to give too much attention to this video, but it says basically the claim is that rabbinical Judaism erased the records, either, although it's flooded here, or of the references to Jesus in the scripture, and there's several false statements made in this video. One of which, for more than 1 million innocent Jews to be killed, according to Jewish historian Josephus. Why? Why the temple? What did the Jews do to deserve such a? And then Paul Brother says Summer House's comment is good, but yours is even better. I don't know are you talking to me? I don't see this J4. It is true that God was punishing Israel with his destruction right from the beginning, from Sinai. It was always there for them. What happened 2,000 years ago? It seems that God abandoned them for good. Now, if God had abandoned the Jewish people for good, we wouldn't be around anymore. What went extinct when the temple was destroyed 1,950 years ago was not Judaism, but the tempolism of the Sadducees and the heresy of sola scriptura. That's what went extinct. As this video talks a lot about how rabbinical Judaism was preserved, what the person making this video fails to see is that represents God's sovereignty. So there were sins both in and also is left out is that the temple was destroyed before. This was the second temple. Why did God remove his providence from the first temple in the time of Nebuchadnezzar? Did Jesus come as what obviously this person being a Christian is claiming the reason why the temple was destroyed is because the Jews rejected Jesus? Someone who nobody even knew about, right? And because of some small, rather insignificant sect, that's why God took out his wrath upon the Jewish people, because some small, relatively unknown sect, who, as far as we know, during the time when the temple stood, the only piece of literature that they had was the Epistle to the Hebrews. Everything else was written after the destruction of the temple, which is the major reason why most scholars would agree that Hebrews was not written by Paul, even though certain church traditions say that it was written by Paul. The consensus today is that Paul did not write Hebrews. But we see, the earliest parts of what Christians call the New Testament are probably the first book is the book of Hebrews, and then after that you have the epistles of Paul, and then long after that is when the Gospels were written. Most of which, particularly Luke and Acts, and then it would seem that are particularly apologetics concerning, particularly Acts is an apologetic about Paul and presents Paul a totally different way than Paul presents himself. So it's a rather interesting thing that how, these are the books that the church decided to preserve and so forth. Most likely, I'm assuming that the person most likely rejects Catholicism, talking about the Septuagint, so rejects most likely the deuterocanonical books that the Catholic and Orthodox churches preserve and that the Protestants would derisively call Apocrypha, which are not part of the Jewish canon. One of the claims made in this video, which has been repeated time and time again and is rather ridiculous, is that the Masoretic text is additions of the vowels, the syncretic and didactic marks, the musical cantillation notes, and the punctuation. So not really a translation in any sense. So there's a lot of problems with that particular video. But let's address these comments. I don't see where J4RMAMS's comment is. But let's look at this from the beginning. The point is that God allowed for the city and temple destroyed, did not use his power to protect it, and allowed for more than 1 million of innocent Jews to be killed, according to Jewish historian Josephus. Why? Why this change in behavior from God? Why the temple? Why the divine wrath? Maybe you would know that. Now, this is not human history. Again, that this happened, and so our tradition tells us that the first temple, the Bible tells us in the Book of Kings, that the first temple was destroyed because of, well, first of all, even before the first temple, but the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom of Israel, was particularly destroyed because of the sin of idolatry and bloodshed, and that's why the northern kingdom of Israel was destroyed. Debauchery and other things, and similarly, in the end, it is said that the first temple was destroyed because of, according to our tradition, idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder. And the Bible also tells us because of failure to observe the sabbatical year is why not only the temple is destroyed, but why the Jews were exiled from the land so that the land can rest. These are clear in the Bible. And Leviticus particularly talks about this, that Oz Yirzu Aretz Shabsaseha, that the land will then have her rest, that if the Jewish people are not observing the sabbatical, then they're chased off the land in order to observe the sabbatical year. And so in order that the land should rest. And it will go for the other agricultural laws as well. Now, the question comes in about the second temple, which the rabbis tell us, is that there were sins of slander and baseless hatred and sectarianism. And so because you had these groups, heretical groups, particularly the Sadducees, that's what brought God's wrath, particularly on the temple. The Sadducees were a cult that rejected the afterlife. They rejected the traditions that were passed down from Moses with a sort of succession, not going to use the term apostolic succession, but the similar type of successionism that passed the traditions, the extra-biblical traditions, from Moses until the time of, to this very day, and that since particularly unity they were that their whole sect went extinct when the temple was destroyed. They were also sellouts. They kowtowed to Rome, and so for that reason, it's interesting, and it was the Romans that destroyed them. It should be noted also that if you look at the Sadducees were mostly the priests. There were a few priests who were loyal to Judaism, but the majority of the priests in the time of the Second Temple were Sadducees. They tended to be elitists and big shots. That's the history there. Now, along those lines, about the elitism of the Sadducees, we have that these were very corrupt people, and many other issues with the Sadducees, and they went extinct when the temple was destroyed. There's nothing left of the Sadducees when the temple was destroyed. But I wanted to bring out another issue, that if the record of the Gospel of John is accurate, which I generally don't believe it to be, but if you read about the sham trial of the Sanhedrin, that's only recorded in the Gospel of John and not in the Synoptic Gospels, you'll notice it says the priests of the Sanhedrin. Many people mistakenly believe that it was the rabbinical Sanhedrin, what the Gospels would call the scribes and the Pharisees, that those were the ones that in this story condemned Jesus. I don't really believe this to be a historical record at all, but if it is, it's noteworthy that it mentions the priests, because there was the Beis Din Shel Kohanim. There were two separate Sanhedrins. At one point in history, there were Sadducees in the main Sanhedrin, and they were expelled. And so by that time in history, the priests had their own court, which we called the Beis Din Shel Kohanim. That's how it's recorded in our literature, the court of the priests. And so in Greek, it would also be called Sanhedrin. And that is what those, meaning in the narrative presented by John, that is what, those were the ones who condemned Jesus and hand him over to the Romans. The so-called Pharisees, the scribes and Pharisees as they're called, would never do such a thing, to hand over a fellow Jew to the Romans to be crucified. It's ridiculous. No matter what his sin was. So that's an important point. In any event, these were the sins that our rabbis say that we did to deserve the divine wrath. I mean, the person making this video mentioned Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai and how he saved Judaism. really it's how God saved Judaism through Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. But if you're curious about what deserved the divine wrath, there's many narratives there in that same passage, the Talmud in Gittin, around folio 56 thereabout, that describe. I actually have videos on the channel that describe how. Let me see. Did we get a half hour yet? We have 8 more minutes. All right. I have to do a half hour once a week. 7.5 minutes. So anyway, that's what we did to deserve the divine wrath. It was that we did these sins, particularly slander, baseless hatred, sectarianism, and then there were other incidents of injustice and so forth that brought us to deserve to have the temple destroyed and the exile. But nonetheless, God was with us through that time, and so this, what Paul Brother 8791 says, it's true that God was punishing destructions in the beginning was from Sinai, but always was there for them. What happened 2,000 years ago? It seems that God abandoned them for good. It doesn't seem like that to me, because we're still here. You know, the question that famously was, I think it was Emperor Franz Ferdinand asked his advisors for proof of God's existence, and they said with the Jews. You know, God is certainly. Our faith is based in miracles. Our faith is based in the clear revelation. But nonetheless, now I'm wondering, is there any other replies here? I don't see this one from. Here's another one. Jewish Septuagint was only on the Pentateuch. Greek Isaiah is made by the church, not by the Jewish community. Another lie by you. This is one of the examples that he brings, is that the Greek Isaiah says, uses the word Parthenos to translate Alma, and then somehow it's more likely another deceptive lie from you. This is what I've been taught, is that, and it's clear that the Targum Hashivim, that the Septuagint that we speak of, which most likely has been lost, and it's not the Septuagint that's now used, that because there's a lot of things that are mentioned there that are not in there. But when Ptolemy asked for the Torah to be translated, he says, Kisvo Olai Torah Moshe Rabbeinu, recorded in the Gemara and the Talmud and Megillah, and also in the Epistle of Aristus, there's no it's only on the first 5 books of the Bible. Incidentally, the word Parthenos does not need to mean the Basula. So that's another part. Parthenos could be in any of talking in the past tense. It's a sign that was already. It's not talking about a future sign. All right, let's get to our own learning. I'm just going to pause this for a second. I'll be right back. Just for a little bit of privacy. That's why I like to pause it. My wife's over by Stonehenge, I guess. I won't call her again. Once we make it to 30 minutes, I think I'm going to finish this live stream, if Safari will open. Anything else anybody want to talk about in the meantime? Feel free to anything in the comments and so forth. I think this is where I'm up to. I love Kedushin, Koishinus, and the Suos, by Darshi, Lasia, Ishis, Amesa, Chutza, Ishzar, Achdias for Chutza, He Lasia, Ishzar, Aval Hachla, Loyas for Chutza, Kiel Ishzar. Right? So Gemara says that it's talking about Chalitza. Bekibel Tamid Amr Yesh Mams Bechayev Lavan Yesh Emel Fish Ein Bekian. Who's the comment here? You can't really read comments. Yesh Emel Fish Ein Bekian Dikduke Mitzvos Ma'an Yesh Emel Mamar of Idi Bar Avin Rabbi Eliezer, he the son in Matzos Kusi Muteris for Adam Yosef Yedei Chavasik Pesach, that the Samaritan matzahs are kosher, and we can fulfill the mitzvah. Rabbi Eliezer is for the fish and we can make mitzvahs. We shouldn't know mitzvah shechut go put some harbe. Why can't I read the comments? How does that work? I can't. These comments are like very hard to read. Only have to do like a minute and a half, and then. Ela hachi mayin bekin lefishin bekin the source kedushin gerish number of Nachman bar bar Abuya mamzer meichayse mamzer eishes achdus arva and Mike mashma one yeshachem krisis nisnei chalata. How do you read these comments? They're so light. Rava Amar Harvard. Mishivchan is Arvu Bahen Isura Mishum Mai Mishum Nechada Maisa Shahaya Kachaya Neisa Isha Rabbi Imahis Shin Shmoina Ima Ve'ema 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 Via Ve'ema Ve'ema Via Ve'ema Levia V'Yisraelis Ve'Sifin Alein Oid Achaz God can learn the Mizbeach Lamala Lamala Lebanon and Hedron Lamala V'Chol Shuchsaku Rabbi Sam Mishay Rabbi the Goy Tzedakah Masila Kahuna so Chlebdek Achrein Yesi Omer Af Misha Awesome Ayed Ba'arche Shana Shal Tzipori B'Chaninim and Tignas Omer Af Misha Hay Muchtav Bispatch Yeshul Melech Alright, I did a half hour. Alright, I can't read these comments. How do I... Alright, I've done my half hour. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. And we'll see you later.